Good evening, everyone. If anyone is still coming in through the doors, if you'd like to take a seat, we're going to begin our presentation. Once again, good evening. My name is Adam Haba, and I am, along with my wife, Lisa Haba, am a partner with the Haba Law Firm. We are a law firm here in Central Florida that has dedicated a large majority of our practice in assisting victims of human trafficking and sexual assault through various attempts at civil litigation. I'd like to welcome everybody here to our presentation, which is entitled A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, Protecting Youth from Predators in This Digital Age. I'd like to start by thanking Annunciation Catholic Church, particularly Father Ivan, for hosting this presentation and for allowing us to be a part of what really is a flagship event to kick off an exciting ministry at this parish. And that would be the entitled HOME, which stands for Human Trafficking Outreach, Ministry, and Education. I know Father Ivan is incredibly excited and passionate about this ministry, and as parishioners here, my wife and I are also excited to see our parish leading the fight in the diocese for this important topic that affects so many in this community. I also would like to thank all of you who decided to spend your Friday evenings to attend this event, as well as those who are streaming live or are part of the live stream. You showing up tonight is so important. It makes you part of showing how important this subject is to fight the national epidemic that has been affecting our youth and targeting our youth, particularly in this digital age. So without further ado, I'm going to invite up Father Ivan to lead us in an opening prayer.
Also want to welcome you and say thank you for being here. You know, for me, about a year ago, I came to a similar presentation, and the information was somewhat overwhelming in a good way. What it did for me, not only to educate me, but it went somewhere deep inside of me that felt helpless. And so it made me go to prayer and say, Lord, what do I do? How can we help? And for a whole year, the Lord invited me to just simply pray. To pray for the ministry, to pray for the outreach, to pray for the awareness, to pray for the education, to just simply pray. And this evening is the fruitfulness of that contemplation. It is the fruitfulness of that prayer. That when we feel helpless, we go to the one who can help us. And God is helping us today with this ministry, with the awareness, with the protection. The mission that Jesus shares with us is simple, but so profound when we think of those who have been human trafficked. He says, I've come to heal the brokenhearted. I've come to liberate. I've come to bring freedom to those in captivity. I've come to set you free. This evening, as we receive the information, let us simply take it to prayer and allow the Lord to help us to help Him, to help us to help others, to protect, to educate, and perhaps to create a safe home or to bring back home those who have been taken from their family. Today, receive, listen, learn, become aware, and then pray and ask the Lord to ask you, to help you, to feel how you might be inspired to be part of this amazing ministry. Home, human trafficking, outreach, ministry, and education. Heavenly Father, we thank you for inspiring in our hearts a desire to learn, to be informed, and to form others. Thank you for drawing a greater awareness and attention to this need, for helping us to protect our children, our youth, our family, our friends, our neighbors. May everything that we do, dear Lord, in this ministry continue with your loving help and come to perfection under your guidance. We ask you to bless those who are sharing the information that you've prepared this evening, to bless our presenters, but bless all those gathered here and those on our live stream as well, so that we all, dear Lord, might create a safe home for our family, for our friends, for our loved ones, and all our neighbors. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Once again, thank you, Father Ivan. So tonight's presentation is going to be broken up into a couple different subjects or topics involving human trafficking in this digital age, and we have a number of different exciting speakers that are going to talk about each of those different topics. The first, and the areas that they're broken up into, I'm just going to quickly run through them. You're going to hear what is human trafficking. That's going to be our initial foray into a subject matter that a lot of people that I speak to, both in our law practice and just throughout our community, have a very skewed or misunderstanding of exactly what human trafficking is. The next subject that we're going to talk about is how traffickers groom and recruit children online. After that, the next topic will be what to do if you suspect grooming, followed by the dark side of artificial intelligence, and finally, how to talk to your children. Many of you are parents or grandparents, so that is one of the toughest things that we have to do, is to protect our youth for what you're going to hear about tonight. The first presentation, what is human trafficking, I just want to briefly, for many of you this may be the first time you're hearing about the subject matter. I know when we first, as a practice, started to get involved in the fight against human trafficking, I think it was around the time when the movie Taken had come out, and that was my misunderstanding or understanding of what trafficking was. And through the years of being involved with victims, it's shocking how far off my understanding was. It really, it's a great movie, but it doesn't quite get to what the common elements involving trafficking here in the United States entails. And more recently, if some of you, I know many of you may have seen the more recent movie that's come out, Sound of Freedom. Again, a great movie, very, very well done from an international standpoint, but very far off on the mark of what happens here in this country. Domestic trafficking here, in human trafficking in this country is very different. And that's one of the first things you're going to hear about in the first presentation. What is human trafficking is the elements that happen right in our backyard, right in our own community, at our own schools, at our own parishes, and our own community centers. Our first speaker is my wife, Lisa Haba. Lisa Haba is an attorney in Central Florida that has spent her career working to fight against human trafficking, sex crimes, and crimes against children. Mrs. Haba works for the Haba Law Firm located here in Central Florida with cases nationwide. In this capacity, she files lawsuits on behalf of human trafficking and sexual abuse survivors against hotels, rideshare services, social media companies, schools, churches, or any other businesses that profit from the exploitation of a person. Notably, Mrs. Haba is one of the lead attorneys on the ongoing class action lawsuit against billionaire fashion mogul Peter Nygaard for international human trafficking and the exploitation of women and children. She is lead counsel for 2 young men in a groundbreaking lawsuit against Twitter for sex trafficking and the dissemination of child sexual abuse material on the Twitter platform. Previously, she served as the Assistant State Attorney in Central Florida, where she prosecuted human trafficking, sex crimes, child abuse, homicides, violent felonies, and career criminals. Mrs. Haba currently serves as an executive committee member for the Central Florida Human Trafficking Task Force. She's also on the board of directors for the Community and Support Services Board for the Catholic Charities of Central Florida. Throughout her career, Mrs. Haba has earned several awards for her legal advocacy. Most notably, she was honored with the award for the 2017 Prosecutor of the Year for the state of Florida from Attorney General Pam Bondi for human trafficking prosecution and victim advocacy. Obviously, I'm a little biased as she is my wife and my law partner, but it's hard to know few people that know more about this subject than Lisa Haba, and so I'm excited to have her come up and explain to all of you, as she did to me so many years ago, exactly what human trafficking is.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to start off by talking about human trafficking in general. We're here to talk a lot about the tech side of this because that's where your children might be at risk. But before we get to where the risks are, we have to understand what human trafficking is so that we know what we're looking at and what we're dealing with. By a show of hands, who here thinks their children might be at risk for human trafficking? Okay, that's better than I usually get, about half of you. Every single one of you has a risk factor because you know why? Your children have a vulnerability. They're going to be teenagers. They're going to go through puberty. They're going to be in a situation where they're going to wonder what people think about them, want to be loved, want to be pretty, want to be liked, want to be popular. All of those vulnerabilities open them up to being exploited. And so because of that, you need to understand what we're dealing with. Human trafficking is not crossing international borders. It's not dragging people under the bed as in Taken and kidnapping them. Those are obviously things that get dramatized in the movies. They could happen. But what we're seeing actually happen is much more in line with what this statute talks about. So transporting, soliciting, recruiting, harboring, providing, enticing, maintaining, or obtaining a person for the purpose of exploiting that person. That's a pretty general statute, right? And what we're looking at, there's obviously labor trafficking. We're not going to talk about that today. But it's for the purpose of commercial sexual activity. So that's an umbrella phrase, if you will. Usually people talk about prostitution. Prostitution is a voluntary act where a consenting adult voluntarily exchanges sex acts for money. But a child cannot be a prostitute. A child cannot consent to sexual activity under the age of 16 at all. And for 16 and 17-year-olds, they can only consent to having sexual activity in the state of Florida with individuals 24 years old and older. So understanding that our children cannot consent, they cannot engage in commercial sex, there is no such thing as a child prostitute. Now, understanding that if they're engaging in commercial sexual activity, somebody else is exploiting them to have that happen, that is human trafficking. So let that sink in. If somebody else is profiting in some way from somebody's exploitation, and they're a minor, that is human trafficking. Now, for adults, just so we have some context here, there's an extra element, because an adult can consent to engage in prostitution. An adult, it becomes human trafficking if that consent it does not consent, if it happens because of coercion. And I'm going to go through what coercion really looks like, because even though minors don't have to have this be a part of it, it still is what you're normally going to see. Coercion comes in many forms. We see the one that everyone talks about is force. If there's violence involved to cause somebody to engage in commercial sex acts, that's going to obviously qualify as human trafficking. That might look like this, for example. You have an individual who is exploiting a minor, and they say, I'd like you to go out and commit commercial sex acts with, 5 guys. We've posted you on a website, and we'd like those people to come in and have sex with you. I'll be making all the profits. That individual says, no, I don't want to do it. I have no interest in doing that, and they get hit for it. Obviously, if they then turn around and do it, they are being coerced because of force. Threats of force, restraining, isolation, and confinement. We don't really see a lot of confinement. It does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't. But if you think about it, it's far easier to convince somebody to acquiesce to being exploited if they think they're agreeing to it. We call it the chains on your mind. If you put a chain on somebody's mind and make them think they've made this choice for themselves, you're going to have a compliant victim. If you lock them in a basement, they're going to be trying to escape every day. So traffickers have become extremely good at manipulation. That is the name of the trafficking game. They try to manipulate and coerce individuals to believe that they have no other choice. So what does isolation and confinement and restraint look like? Typically what I've seen is you have a victim who says, my parents don't understand me, my friends don't understand me, only this person understands me, only he gets me, only he loves me. It's me and him against the world. We're an isolated unit. And they slowly put a divide between their family and their friends and their loved ones. That is isolation, that is confinement, that is restraint. A debt servitude would look like this. You're gonna work for me and I'm gonna take a price for what you're doing. So for example, and this is more in the labor trafficking field usually, but it could qualify in sex trafficking as well. I'm going to have you go work in a field. And in that field, you're gonna work 8 hours a day, and you're gonna make $1 for your day's work. And we're gonna charge you $5 for the water you need to survive, and we're gonna charge you $10 for lunch. And by the end of the day, the ride you took in the tractor to get out to that field, that's gonna be another $3. So you've now made $1, but you owe me a lot more than you owed. You're never gonna get out of that cycle. That's a debt servitude. Threat of legal harm we see frequently. There is a way to control somebody. If you get a person addicted to drugs, if you have them engaging in commercial sex acts, and all of a sudden they turn around and they say, I really want to go talk to the police. Traffickers embed it in their minds that nobody is going to believe you. Nobody is going to listen to you because you're just a junkie. You're just a prostitute. You're just a insert whatever name they come up with. That brainwashing effect on them makes them believe that they have no say. Now that they've stripped their identity from them, stripped their worth from them, they threaten, I'll turn you into immigration if they're not a US citizen. I'll turn you into the police and tell them what you're doing with your life if there's criminal repercussions for prostitution. There is a great threat to individuals that are in the system that they aren't going to be believed and they're going to be criminally prosecuted, they're going to be deported, or something else worse is going to happen to them. And I can tell you for traffickers, most traffickers, not all, have violence as a part of their practice. So imagine a victim talking to law enforcement against their trafficker's wishes, and then the police don't believe them. They're going to be punished for that. That punishment is going to be worse than anything they could have endured because they want to make sure it never happens again. So what does this do? Chains in the mind. They don't have anybody they can talk to. They're isolated. They don't have an out. Threats of financial harm is pretty self-explanatory. Fraud and deceit is very common. There's always fraud and deceit involved in part of the grooming and luring process. We'll get to that in a few minutes. And controlled substances. Controlled substances are a crucial part of most trafficking operations. Anytime a person is engaging in commercial sex acts, it is not something that they usually want to be doing. There is no child that wakes up and says, I'd like to be a prostitute when I grow up. Sexuality is a gift. It is a blessing. It is something that is holy and sacred. It is not meant to be exploited. But when they pervert it and exploit it through sex trafficking, it takes something away from the soul. It takes something out of it, and it strips them of their dignity. And as a result of that, it becomes hard to live with yourself. Usually the only way that that's possible when you're in this world, and I'm not saying this is a choice because the traffickers force it, is they give them drugs to become numb. Heroin and cocaine are usually the two we see. Meth we see a lot. Crack cocaine we see a lot. These are extremely hard drugs. And the problem is that once that person has an addiction, the withdrawal symptoms are tremendous. And so now that trafficker has created a new vulnerability. That trafficker has created a situation where if that person starts to go through withdrawal symptoms, they're going to do what it takes to not experience the pain that withdrawal takes. And I just want to mention this for a quick minute. I've had a lot of people heard a lot of talk about drug addiction. Our sheriff in Seminole County has been a leader in helping us understand the nature of addiction and what it really does to a person, and how it really, once a person is addicted, there is a lot less of a choice, and it's a medical condition that needs to be helped. I say that because, I'll give you an example. Heroin is an opioid. We've had a terrible opioid addiction for many survivors of human trafficking. What opioids do, and this is very simplistic, I'm certainly not a medical doctor, but it attaches to the part of your brain that controls your basic functions. So for example, if I were to take your head and put it under water, and you are struggling to breathe, your instincts are going to kick in. And they're going to say, I need to breathe, or I'm going to die. When a person who's addicted to heroin doesn't get the opioid they need, or fentanyl, or one of the other opioids, the instincts kick in. And it says, if I don't experience my next fix, I am going to die. It is equivalent to having an instinctual need to live. That is such a strong addiction that it's not something that somebody turns around and says one day, I'm going to go quit doing drugs today and go back to my family. That's why the opioid addiction has been so strong. That's why it has been so toxic. And that's why when traffickers get their victims addicted to opioids or crack cocaine or meth or one of these other extremely strong drugs, they have an absolute hold on that person and they control their next fix. So we frequently see it look like this. Trafficker, the girl, or it's not always a girl, there's many boys too that are addicted as well and also victims. But I'll just, for this example, say there was a girl who's 15 years old and she's addicted to heroin. And she needs her fix or she's going to get sick and feel like she's going to die. And she asks her trafficker, who usually is also her drug dealer, for her fix. And what that looks like is he says, well, you know what? I'm going to need $500. And you better get it before your dope sickness kicks in or you're going to feel real bad. Get to work. And if she doesn't come back in time with that money, she starts to feel sick. And so she's going to learn very quickly that she better get out there and make the money he expects that day or she's going to get dope sick. And he'll give her just enough to not feel sick until the next time period. And it keeps her in an endless cycle that is almost impossible to break out of without help. So we've talked about what human trafficking is. I want to make sure it's very clear that two of the things that are often confused with human trafficking are human smuggling. Human trafficking is a crime against the person. Human smuggling is a crime against the US border. And I say that because a lot of people ask me, well, where are they bringing the girls from? Where are they what border are they crossing? What country are they coming from? There absolutely are people from other countries being brought here and exploited. There are also US citizens being exploited every day here in our backyard. And smuggling is when you cross the border with a person. A coyote brings somebody across the border. It's a crime against the border. Human trafficking has nothing to do with movement. You can stay in one room, in one hotel, and work human trafficking and be human trafficked out of that hotel room every single day for years and never leave that hotel room, and you are still a victim of human trafficking. Child exploitation is also in the same genre, but not exactly the same. Child exploitation is when a child is being groomed, they're being recruited, they're being exploited in some way sexually. That doesn't necessarily mean they're being trafficked. The difference is going to be that somebody else is involved. So if you have bad guy A who's going to engage in sexual activity with a minor, and it's all for his own personal gain and all for his own gratification, if you will. That is going to be child exploitation. That child is being harmed in a very severe way. That child was groomed and recruited to be a victim of this individual. But he's not trafficking her, he's exploiting her. Human trafficking would be where he would take her and then begin getting some kind of benefit. It doesn't have to always be money, it can be other forms of benefits. Harvey Weinstein, for example, was offering opportunities on the casting couch as the commercial entity that was being exchanged, the item to be exchanged, if you will. But frequently, at least here in Orlando, usually what we see is money. Money is being exchanged so that that victim is having commercial sex acts with other individuals. Scott, I did something. So while our slides are coming back up, there we go. So let's talk about where do traffickers come find our kids. I've been asked about whether or not they go to the malls, whether or not they go to the playgrounds, whether or not they have the little white van driving around offering candy to kids. All of your old stereotypes ended when the internet began. Predators want to find children. What's the best way to find children? To go where they are. And where are kids now? They're online. And so our children are being exploited online. In addition, why are predators more likely to be online than in person? Well, it's safer for them. There's anonymity. They can pretend to be something they're not. It's easier to lure the children by pretending to be something you're not. It's easier to not get caught if somebody intervenes. It's easier to avoid law enforcement detection. And frankly, our epidemic of online exploitation has become so vast that law enforcement can't keep up with it in many areas. So it is very, very enticing to a predator to do their grooming and recruiting online, to find their victims, and then they don't have to worry about getting caught, or so they think. Talking about manipulation for a few minutes, a lot of times I talk to people about how do I know a victim is going to become a victim? My kid's a good kid. There's no way this would have happened. So let me talk to you a little bit about the process of grooming a child. And this is what we see once the child, and this is after the online piece, this is once the child is in person, what we start to see. Just I typed in pimp books online. This is how many books there are that are easy to access to teach you how to manipulate a human being to do whatever you want them to do. These books teach the methodology of traffickers, of pimps, of how to manipulate and control a human being. And these are not documentaries telling somebody a life story about somebody. These are actual volumes explaining to you how to manipulate a human being to your will. There's a couple different psychologies of pimping, but I'm going to talk about one called the lover boy method. They also call it the Romeo method. Remember we talked a minute ago about it's easier to control somebody if you think about if they're willing to agree with what you want, if they think that they chose it for themselves. Well, the process is pretty simple. You find a vulnerability. Most 11, 12, and 13-year-olds are about as easy as you get. You form a connection, you isolate them from others so they trust only you, and then you start building trust. And it could be through, we have common interests. A lot of times the lover boy is going to be a cute boy, and he's probably an older individual, but their picture is going to be a cute young boy who's about the same age as the target female, or vice versa, or whatever. You know, they'll find the demographic that would fit the vulnerability of that child, and they're going to offer what it takes. And so we've seen, I really want to be a model when I grow up. You aren't going to believe it. My cousin's a modeling agent. I can set you up on the modeling gig of your lifetime. I'd like to be an actress. You wouldn't believe it. I know the producer of MGM Studios personally. He was at my house last week. He's friends with my dad. You know, I really wish somebody loved and cared about me. I love you. I care about you. It's very, very easy to start manipulating young, impressionable minds, and it doesn't take a lot to get them to think that they've met somebody they can trust, and then they ask them to meet. Once they meet, the grooming for a trafficker is not that hard. Unfortunately, it happens quite frequently, and we've seen straight A students from good homes fall prey to this. There was a girl here in Seminole County, and I'll just give you a quick example because this is very much like what happened to her. She was 11 years old when she met her trafficker online. She thought it was a boy she went to school with. She was in the 6th grade at a school in Seminole County, and she got caught with a little bit of marijuana. Dumb choice, she and her friend were experimenting. And she went to the alternative school. At the alternative school, she met a boy who she thought was extremely interesting, and they began dating. But he was a trafficker. And he worked with older men that were traffickers, because a lot of times they recruit in schools, and that very quickly turned it from a straight A good student who made a simple mistake and was taking the consequence that she should have had for it, took her into a nightmare. She was dealing with a couple typical teenage things. She had 2 parents at home, she came from a religious background, she had stability and good grades, but she wanted to be loved, and he loved her, or so he said, right? It wasn't real love, but so he said. He loved her. And he began buying her gifts, showering her with love and attention. He bought her hair and nails and presents, and you couldn't believe how much money he spent on her. And she just couldn't believe how lucky she was. This guy loved her so much. And then he started to pull back a little bit, which made her love him more. I want that back. I don't want him to pull back. And he began telling her, well, if you want me to find you attractive, I think you need to walk like this. I think you need to talk like this. You need to dress like this. You need to act like this. And he began training her to be the victim that he wanted her to be. He forced her to start watching porn, which was her training ground of what he expected her to do down the road. And he gave her a new nickname, because in embracing her identity, he took away who she was and began making her into who he wanted her to be. And with her new identity, he began to pull back a little bit more, and then there became the question, I want to marry you. I love you, I want to marry you. But we don't have enough money. I can't keep supporting you like this. I'm going to need you. Have I not given everything to you? Have I not done everything you ever asked of me? You owe me. You owe me a show of love the way that I have shown you love. So here's what you're going to do to show me love. You're going to turn a trick. You're going to go on a date. You're going to have sex with this guy who is going to pay you this amount of money, which will help us pay our bills this month. You love me, right? Well, of course, but I don't want to do that. But if you love me, you owe me. And so she agreed, thinking it was a one-time thing. That one-time thing, of course, after you've done it once, what's twice? What's 3 times? And that turned into a vicious cycle where she was suddenly having 10 dates a day. And 10 dates a day turned into one day she said, I thought this was a one-time thing. I don't want to do this anymore. That was the first day that this lover boy pimp became, they call it a gorilla pimp. He hit her. And then domestic violence started. And so by the end of this grounding, this conditioning, this grooming process of this victim, at the end of it, she was desperately in love with this man and desperately afraid of him all at the same time. And that, coupled with an addiction, made it almost an impenetrable bond. And when I asked her some questions, she told me that she deserved this because she chose it for herself. She believed that everything that had happened to her was her own choosing. And she didn't see that she had been a victim who had been manipulated the entire time. I just want to show you, just from the mind of a pimp, this was a guy who was arrested in 2012. And in the evidence that they collected from him, they found this note that he had written about what he believed. They called it the rules of the game. In the pimping world, if you will, they call the lifestyle of being in human trafficking the game. So he said the rules of the game of hoes, which is, of course, what they call the victims. And you can see that he says, always make them need and depend on you. See you have power over them. Power is control. Make them understand that you don't need them, they need you, and they are replaceable. Never let them know if you need them deep down inside. Never let one get away with sneaking anything, because once they feel they get away with it, they will always scheme. No matter how much you like or care for one or any of them, don't trust none of them. Like Scarface, who do I trust? Me, that's who. Always stay two steps ahead of the game you have them playing. Don't let them know all your plans, but always know all of theirs. Make sure you own their mind, body, and soul, and test it out every often to make sure. Know you're on the law as possible when it comes down to family and I'm sorry, his handwriting is terrible, and haters, because you can't trust none of them. Always try to know what's going on. Make them tell on each other. Give respect when respect's due, meaning follow the rules, and you should be Gucci. That is the way pimps think. That is the way traffickers think. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is sextortion, because sextortion is sort of the new wave of trafficking that we're seeing online and in our schools and especially with our children. Notably, it's a form of child exploitation. It's also a form of trafficking. And there's a case that I've been working on. I'm going to share the fact pattern with you because I think it's very instructive of what sextortion looks like. There were two boys here in Central Florida. These two boys were normal teenage boys. They both came from good households. They both had, both parents of both households were still married. Both had religious upbringings. Everybody was working. Nobody was in poverty. These were good kids. They were involved in sports and clubs and really had a promising future. They had a sleepover one day, and they went on Snapchat. And on Snapchat, they began talking with somebody who claimed to be a girl they went to high school with. And this girl, or it was in their feeder chain of schools, but this girl was very pretty. She was very popular. She was somebody who they would like to talk to, and they were very interested in talking to her. And what it really was a trafficker. And this trafficker was posing, had done his homework. He had looked up these children's profiles online, found out who they knew, where they went to school, what they were interested in, what clubs they were doing. Kids post all about it, so it was really easy to find. And then they impersonated a girl they went to high school with. And that impersonation became, I, fictitious girl, will send you a picture of me, and then you're gonna return a picture of you. And these two 13-year-old boys didn't think twice about it. They said, gosh, that sounds like a great idea. And being 13-year-old boys, they sent it. That immediately turned into a sextortion scheme. That immediately turned into, you're gonna send me more pictures and more videos and more graphic sexual acts, and if you don't, I'm gonna send it to your pastor, his name is this. I'm gonna send it to your parents. I know your dad's work schedule. I'm gonna come after your family. I'm going to give it to your coach. I'm gonna ruin your life. These boys were terrified. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know they could talk to their parents. They didn't know who they could talk to, so they complied. And they sent more and more and more. And after some time, just like we've talked about, they asked to meet the boys. And thankfully, they stopped that and they blocked them. New profile pops up. Big mistake blocking us. They kept hounding them and they didn't stop. The traffickers were relentless. So eventually these boys managed to cease this communication. They managed to get offline and get everything to stop. And they thought they were done. They thought the nightmare was over. They never were going to talk about it again. They just never wanted to remember this awful experience they had been through. 2 years later on Twitter, a compilation video of all of this imagery and videos was released. And that compilation video was effectively the greatest hits, if you will, of the horrors these children had experienced at 13 and 14 years old. It went viral around their high school. One of the boys almost killed himself. One of the other ones stopped going to school. It fundamentally destroyed their lives. Neither of them identified as homosexual, so there was an even bigger ego and stigma attached to that scenario. And the parents went to Twitter, and they said, Twitter, this is child pornography, take it down. They said it was derived from exploitation. They identified that it was not voluntary acts. So what did Twitter do? They asked for age verification. Okay, no problem. Florida driver's license, here you go. After reviewing the images, after verifying their age, Twitter's response to this entire situation was, we don't find a violation of our policies and we will not be removing these images. So every single one of you that thinks that online social media is going to protect your children, I can promise you that this is not an isolated case. This is the norm. social media will not protect your children. Your children are not safe on social media because even when handed exact child pornography that matched a driver's license showing the age, they refuse to take it down. And Twitter is not the worst. There are lawsuits across this country against all of these individuals. Congress has subpoenaed the big 5 social media companies to come and explain themselves before Congress on January 31st, and we'll see how that goes. Your children are not safe on social media because social media doesn't care. So it falls into your hands as parents to protect your children. And I'm going to turn it over to Adam to introduce our next speaker. Doesn't press very well.
Thank you again, Lisa, for helping to educate everybody here on exactly what human trafficking looks like in today's digital age. You'll see too up on the slide, we have Lisa's email address and our website where you can always reach out for additional information. We'll have a slide at the end as well with all the speakers' contact information so that if you do have any follow-up questions or you do want to get involved in anything that any of the speakers do or their groups, they'll be happy to speak with you. So moving on to the next presentation, which is going to be presented to us by Jan Edwards from Paving the Way. This next one is going to be titled Understanding the Wolves. So the first presentation, of course, was understanding what is human trafficking and what does it look like today. The next presentation is going to get more into understanding the actual predators, the wolves, how they actually do the grooming and the recruitment, particularly online through social media, as Lisa spoke about. Our next speaker, Jan Edwards, is the founder and president of Paving the Way Foundation. That's an organization that empowers communities to be a fierce disruption in the cycle of child exploitation around the globe. This is accomplished through engaging educational training programs to break the cycle. Paving the Way has delivered their programs to 29,000 youth and adults in the past 7 years in Central Florida and around the nation. Ms. Edwards has been featured on local and national television, podcasts, and radio shows. She was awarded the Orlando Magazine's Women of the Year and United Abolitionists Polaris Star Award for the NGO Leader of the Year for her organization's work. She's the writer and co-director of the award-winning film Trapped in the Trade, which was featured on CNN. I've known Jan for many years, and just like all of our speakers here tonight, I've yet to meet anybody than our speakers here that are more passionate about the fight against human trafficking. So I'm very excited for you all to hear from Ms. Edwards and her understanding of a presentation on how traffickers groom and recruit online.
Oof, okay, since I'm talking longer, I gotta have water. All right, I'm gonna give this to you. Who goes next, Kate or you? You, Tomas. Okay, so that's just in case. Hi. Hi, I have a little bit different presentation style than my friend the attorney. Because I spend most of my time in front of young people. It doesn't go well when you just are a talking head for them, you know? So first of all, I just want to acknowledge each and every one of you for being here. This is a challenging conversation. It's a challenging topic. I could feel the heaviness in the room, so I'm going to just step right outside, and I'm going to lay 3 ground rules, and we're going to see how well you participate and listen. Okay, you ready? Okay, ground rule number 1. This is actually a conversation. I am not a talking head. It doesn't, again, go well with children. So this is a conversation. So I'm actually going to engage with you, and I'm going to ask you questions. And that means you're going to? Yes, respond. Okay, one more time. I'm going to ask questions, and you're going to? Yes, answer. Awesome. Okay, good. That's the first ground rule. The second ground rule is we're going to share some stuff, and you're going to be, oh my gosh, and you're going to nudge your neighbor and say, oh my, did you see, did you know? Like, there will be some reaction, not a problem. I'm used to being in front of middle schoolers. They have things to say too, right? It's okay. And because we're on a little time thing, I'm going to bring it really back in. So when I'm talking, you're not, okay? And it's okay if you do, so I'll bring it back in. And when you're talking, we're not, because I actually want to hear what you have to say. Okay, everybody clear on the ground rules? Okay, good. So here's the first thing we're gonna test. We're just gonna test you out. I want everybody to stand up and shake it off. That was a lot of information. Just shake it off, man. Shake it off. Just shake it off. Shake it off. Yeah, stretch, move your body. Okay, good. Great job. Take a seat. Well done. Give yourselves a hand. Good job, really good. Thank you for participating. Okay, so I'm a walker arounder. They asked me what kind of mic I want. I want a walker arounder because I walk around and I use my hands. I want to see where I want to, well, I say I mean God. I never really know what I'm going to say because God just kind of flows through me. So I've got a couple of questions for you. This is the participation part. How many of you have 5th grade or older kids in school? I just need to see who my audience is. 5th grade, okay, great. Thank you. Next question, how many of them have phones or a tablet or access to a laptop? Okay, good, great. So we're all on the same page here. So, we've talked to just a couple of kids. We educated almost 10,000 kids last year, mostly middle school. People think I'm loony. I love them. Do you know why I love them? Because their brains developed enough that they understand semi-complex things, and they still care. Like they have this heart for humanity, and I love that about them. And then they start to get suppressed around high school, and then there's adults. You guys have done really good so far. So we're gonna talk about online enticement and grooming and recruiting, and I'm gonna give you some statistics as well, but I'm gonna give you some statistics so you can share. The whole purpose of this actual conversation is for you to share. I love that you're here, but if every single one of you shares with 3 of your friends what you learned tonight, that's, I don't know, 300 more people that actually know what's happening here in our community. So rumor has it this thing sticks. Okay, good, there we go. So this is because NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, has not updated their map yet because it is January. This is the map from 2022. These are cyber tips. You all familiar with the Amber Alerts, missing kids? That's them. I'm going to give you a number. It's a lot of numbers, but just be with me. Stay with me. In 2019, there were 16 million cyber tips. You with me? How many do you think there were? By the way, this is the participation part. How many do you think there were in 2022? Just shout it out. This is the brave part. Who's going to be courageous and just shout out? 4 times. Double, 4 times. What else? Anybody else? 100 million, oh gosh, I hope no, thank goodness, no. Whoever said double, good job. 32 million. I remember sitting at Publix on Colonial, I live out by UCF, and it was the day they shut down UCF, 2020. And I remember sitting in my car, because sometimes we women do that, don't we? We sit in our car before we go into the grocery store, make sure we got all our stuff. And I remember someone post on Facebook, they're gonna shut down UCF. And I forwarded that comment and said, you wait, they're gonna shut down public schools next. Forward it. And then it hit me. They're gonna shut down public schools next. We just put 3.2 million children at risk for online perdition. I did not wanna be right about that, and I was. It takes less than 17 minutes for someone, exactly what Lisa said, to entice a child to send an inappropriate picture. You can order DoorDash, the time you order it and it gets to your house, 2 children have sent an inappropriate picture. Now, most parents don't know this and neither do your kiddos. Exactly what Lisa said. That's what's happening to our kiddos. So that's at the global level, all right? What's this a map of? United States, and this is the National Trafficking Hotline. Thank you. Thank you for participating. So I want you to get every single dot on that map represents a human being that is either called and said, hey, I think there's trafficking happening, or I think I'm being trafficked. Okay, so every single dot, that represents a human being. Now, normally I'm in a much smaller environment, so I run up to the screen. But can you see the dangling participle? Where's that?
Florida.
Where do we live? Yeah. How about up north? How many people do we have from Northeast? Yeah, okay. How about all the way over to the west? Where's that? California. I also test geography with kids, by the way. I always acknowledge them when they get all this right. Okay, and then how about in the middle?
Midwest.
Yeah, Midwest Texas. Good. All right. So now you can you've got a map of the United States. Red is hot, blue is not. And if you know the answer, no shouting out. We want people to learn. I'm a huge fan of the Socratic method of education. I'm going to ask questions and have you figure it out. That way you remember it. So where do you think Florida's ranked? Third. Where else? First. Anybody else? I saw a hand back there. Fourth, fifth. Good. By the way, the kids love this. They love guessing. This is where it's happening in Florida. See the I-4 corridor? See I-95? See I-75? It's happening in our own backyard. These are our headlines. This was, by the way, just this week. The police are using World of Warcraft to find a missing child. 3 suspects sentenced for human trafficking scheme in targeting teenage runaways and foster kids. I had the opportunity to train, so I'm Cherokee Indian and Choctaw. For those of you who are Italian, wondering what ethnicity I am, that's what I am. And I was at the Lakota Nation in December to do some training for the Lakota educators, which was awesome, fulfilled something for me. And I had breakfast with one of the Internet Crimes Against Children analysts. And she said something to me, because I see the runaways foster care. She said one of the reasons why foster care kids are so targeted, it just broke my heart when she said this, it's because they're already used to being exchanged for money. Never occurred to me before. Like, I got the vulnerability and missing and not being with their parent, like I got all of that piece, right? But they're used to being exchanged for money. I was like, oh, hurt my heart. And then the very last one, my 12-year-old daughter, parental controls did not save her from that experience. So that's where Florida ranks. For those of you that guessed third. The average age is 10 to 13. This is why we talk to 4th and 5th graders. I love my 5th graders because they're super energetic. They're super and I'll ask a question, I'm like, Miss Jan. I love that about them. Can you tell I like feedback? Are you with me on that? Okay, cool, good. So I'm at a 5th grade class and we had just shared this slide. This little girl raises her hand, Miss Jan, can I share? I'm like, of course. She's so cute. She puts her little hand on her hip and she goes, well, ever since I turned 10, I keep getting DMs from people I don't know. A DM, by the way, is a direct message for those of you that don't know that. And she shifted her hand over and she goes, and it bothers me. I go, I got it, sweetheart. I go, thanks for letting me know. What do you do about that? She goes, well, crossed her hands. Well, she goes, I block and delete them. I'm like, good job, honey, good job. I go, do you report them on the app? Oh, no, I didn't know I could do that. Oh, okay, good. I go, I have another question for you. I said, have you talked to your mom about that? What do you think she said? No. So we have 10-year-olds battling middle-aged predators online, having no idea that they're middle-aged. One of the examples I like to use that the kids sort to get, does everybody know who Serena Williams is? Serena Williams, like the best tennis player on the planet, still, in my opinion. So I'm gonna wave a magic wand and pretend we've all been transported to the US Open in New York, okay? We got center seats. Is anybody here a professional tennis player before I? Okay, good. So there we are. We're in center court, and she says, "Come on down and play with me." Who's going to win?
Of course, her.
She is. Why?
She's got the experience.
And she's been training since she was this big, right? It's the same thing for our kids online. You got a 45-year-old brain and a 13-year-old brain. Who's going to win that conversation? Really? And when Lisa showed me that the picture with the books, because we kind of went over this, of course, I had no idea there were that many books training people how to manipulate people. I was blown away. So even if you don't even think about it, and a book pops up, there you go. It's a great way to make money. So it's 2 terms that we've used already, and I want to go over them. Enticement. And the thing that I really want you to get, especially for parents, is, I'm trying to think which way I want to go with this. Okay. So I want you to see the word "with the intent to." It's actually, you can go to jail for intent to commit murder. Same thing. The intent to commit sexual offense. And that's what these people are doing, both men and women, all right? Now, our prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until we're between 25 and 30. So you've got 13-year-olds engaging with 45-year-olds. Now then, an article just came out in Orlando Family Magazine, and she used my words word for word, and I'm like, oh, I wish she would have edited that. So I'm not going to say the word that she printed wasn't bad, but the past 3 years have really messed our kids up. It has. Unintentional. It's not like this was planned, but it has. They have a hard time engaging with one another. They have a really hard time making eye contact, let alone having conversations with real people. Because it's very safe. It's super safe here. I can put an avatar on here. I can tell you I'm a different age. My parents have no clue. How many of you have the little slidey phones? So, the slide phones, for those in the 30s, 40s, they'll get what I'm talking about. The little slidey phone, you know what I'm talking about? Like you could flip it up, flip phones, flip it this way. Yeah, you flipped it that way, then of course you had the flip phone, right? Well, you could almost Julianne Fries with this thing. And they know how to use it. We don't, not like they do. Not like they do. And predators know that. So it's really easy for them to be lured into a conversation with someone they don't know after having a bad day. Now you gotta I'm gonna share with you what our kiddos tell us, because remember, 29,000 kids. There's been a couple of children we've been in front of, all right? It's the same for all of them. When I ask them, how many of you have gotten a DM, direct message, or an inappropriate picture from someone you don't know, raise your hand. Every hand goes up, including 5th grade, okay? Y'all remember puberty? See, there's the giggle. Do y'all remember puberty? Remember in the movie Big when he invites her to go back and she'll pass? There's a reason, all right? Your brain is scrambled. You love something one day, you hate it the next day. You have a crush on a guy one week, and then you don't like him the next week. The guys have a crush on a girl and when I share this story, they all giggle because yeah, they do. They like something. They just do. How many of you have teenagers? You can, what I'm saying, you can, I need to see your hands. Thank you. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? Their favorite color is blue. 2 weeks later, they hate blue, want to get rid of out of their wardrobe, and they want pink. You're like, what? That's their brain. Predators know this. So all it takes, you've got a period of time where we isolated them, kept them separate from their friends. They were stuck, quite frankly, with us, trying to figure out how to educate them while we're working, trying to keep them alive, keep the lights on, keep food on, all the stuff we were all having to manage during that period of time. And we really didn't even think about having that conversation with them. Just we're busy trying to survive. And you remember how the rules kept changing? So we're like this, trying to keep everything centered for home, but they could feel it. And where did they go for answers? The phone. That's where they went. They had no place else to go. So all it took was you yelling at them getting a bad grade, you telling them to clean their room, oh, I don't know, eat your green beans. That's really all it takes. And the next thing you know, they're down this rabbit hole, and they're gonna go here, and they're gonna complain, my mom's mean, because you wanted them to eat green vegetables, right? But it was a bad day. They didn't know what to do. They just didn't know how to deal with it. And by the way, we didn't either. All they have to do is post, and some guy's gonna entice them. My mom made me eat green beans too, right? Grooming. Exactly what Lisa said. I'm not going to go over it. You're adults, you can read. This is the trust piece. They will get them to trust them over anything, including green beans, including a movie, including dance, whatever it takes. Okay, Scott, I may need your help. I don't know. Oops. Okay. So these are some of the risk factors. And the conversation I have with people is +1, all right? +1. I assert, doesn't matter what household. I've talked to social workers in Title I schools. I've talked to social workers in A-rated schools. Title I schools might be a single parent, working multiple jobs, having to deal with everything that a single parent would have to deal with. They're not going to get the attention they need or want at home, right? A-rated schools, working parents, both very busy, go, 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 go. They might not get the attention they need at that house either, much like Lisa's demonstration of the 11-year-old. So lack of attention at home is number 1. And Kate's gonna share with how you can kind of break that cycle up a little bit for them. So it's +1. And parents, how many of you are the house that everybody comes to? Yeah. Y'all, sorry, have a little bit more of a burden because you're now going to have knowledge their parents don't. You're going to have a conversation with your kiddos at some point in time, right? And you can start to look at this stuff for them too. They might have a single parent household. And you can tell when kids need attention, can't you? Yeah. So you start to do the +1. And we have a lot of migration going on. So we're going to show a little video. It's very short. It's on YouTube, so you can just literally type in online grooming and this video will come up. It shows the intentional grooming of a child and how quickly it can happen. Now what's interesting, when we show this to the kids, they immediately, oh, I would never fall for that. And then my question always is, how many of you said you interacted with somebody online that you didn't know? Oh. They start to build those bridges of the information that we give them. They say, oh yeah, and then, oh yeah, and then I can see it. So here's the 2 questions I asked them, and I'll ask you the same. How could she determine if he really is who he is? Like, what are some things she could do? And then secondly, once she figures out who he is or isn't, what could she do? That will be the audience participation part, by the way. Okay, Scott. I don't know if I need to do anything or if it's all you. Yes. I'm not making
Oh, yeah.
How does it work?
Okay, well, it's pretty simple, really. There's no secret to it. Basically, you just go in, go to the places where people like to go, you know, on the internet, and you pick someone.
Oh, we're just friends, but he's so cool. I mean, we talk all the time.
He's on the JV football team, and he's in that science club that I've been wanting to get into. So, and we have some mutual friends.
Also, you have an instant level of trust if there's a mutual friend that you can clue in on.
So I haven't seen him around, but I think we might have bumped into each other a time or two.
Once you get them to connect with something familiar, it's all good.
He's a really cool guy, and he's super cute and really funny, and we like all the same movies.
Everyone wants to list their favorite books, their favorite movies, their favorite places to eat. So you clue in on those, and you can instantly find some common ground with someone.
I'm really excited to meet him.
What next?
Well, once I have her hooked, I just have to reel her in.
He says it's a surprise, so who knows? But either way, he said we're gonna have a ton of fun tonight.
I promised her we'd have some fun today, so I just wanted to show her how much I like her.
It's gonna be super fun, and we're gonna probably just get to know each other and, you know, go out. So it'll be fun. I'm excited.
Thank you, Scott. Okay. So what are some ways she could see if that was really the kid? What could she do? FaceTime. Good. What else?
If they're at the same school, why don't we sit together at lunch or something?
Yeah. Which lunch do you have? A or B? I have B. Let's meet in between lunch. Really good. What else? Yeah, Google the phone number. Really, really good. You know what? No one has ever said that. I'm tucking that into our arsenal. Thank you. Okay, good. What else? There's still more. Talk to Sam. Yes. Hey, do you know this guy? Really great. Two more. Two more things that she could do. Just say no. Absolutely. Okay, there's three more. What club did he belong to? The science club. Could she go check out the guy or the teacher that runs the science club? Yeah, good. What else? There's one more thing he said he participated in. JV football. Yeah, she could easily go talk to one of her buddies that's on the JV football team, something, but there's stuff she could do to do that. So Lisa's already alluded to this. This is where they find our kiddos. What do all of these have in common besides they're online? Messaging, chat. Now I have people say to me, chat on YouTube, comments. Lisa's working a case. Inside that space, this guy plays all kinds of cool videos. People that comment on the videos, he starts to chat with them and pulls them over to another environment. Discord, how many of your kids are gamers? Do we know? Couple, handful. They know what Discord is. Discord is one of the worst places for trafficking. Now then, you'll see a couple up here that you might not know. Does anybody know what Twitch is? You know what Twitch is? Awesome, tell me. Yeah. So are you ready? It's the craziest thing ever. They watch people play video games. There's an app for that. They watch people play video games. And you know, they can get Easter eggs and level up and find the little tips and tricks and stuff. But Twitch, so is anybody familiar with Omegle? Omegle, yes, I need hands shaking something. Yeah, all right. So they took Omegle down about 6 weeks ago. So we train all kinds of young people, and we were in a behavioral health center, and sometimes we separate the boys and the girls. I personally love training boys because they're just out there, they'll just swing out and they'll share everything. It's how we learn stuff, okay? So we had told them that Omegle was shut down. And they're like, oh man, that was one of my favorite apps. Oh, and there were like 8 of them. So they start going around sharing what they had experienced on Omegle, right? Took them about 2 minutes. And by the time they got to the last kid, he goes, yeah, it's probably a good thing they shut that down because they all had similar experiences. So if you don't know what Omegle was, imagine a roulette wheel. You typed in your info, pressed enter, it whirled in the background and put some stranger on the other side. Do you know what their tagline was? Talk to strangers. What did our parents teach us and what do we teach them? Don't talk to strangers. It's crazy. So, and then they tell us, these kids tell us about Wiz. It's the exact same thing. A lot of parents have no idea what Free Fire is. It's a mobile app. It's a video, it's a game on your phone. You don't even need a console for it. Because we get the opportunity to talk to young people week in and week out, we're probably the most up-to-date of what's actually happening, because when we get to this point, they will actually want us to know. They're like, oh, how come, ATV isn't on there? Or how come Call of Duty's not on there? How come, and I'm being straight up, middle school kids, how come Tinder's not on there? Middle schoolers. Yeah. Lisa already told you about her case. We share that case every single time we're in front of middle schoolers. Because let me ask you a question. When you send a picture or a video to somebody, can you get it back? No, you can't. We work real closely with law enforcement here locally, and I'm lucky enough occasionally to have someone from Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation come train with us. Chad, sadly, has gotten a promotion. He's one of my favorite detectives because he's just groovy cool. You know, one of those guys who's just groovy cool. We were training a group of boys and girls at the Boys and Girls Club. He got a text, he goes, I gotta go recover a girl. It was that real, right there. And all the boys were like, they stopped talking. And he's like, this stuff's serious. You think no one can see your stuff? He goes, I can subpoena Snapchat right now and see every video, every text, every single thing you've sent. They freeze. And they get all uncomfortable. We just did a survey with a group, Elevate Orlando, if you're familiar with it. They're one of my new favorite groups. They work with kids in the schools. It's God-centered. They can't talk about God, but they can talk about godly principles, which I appreciate. We just did a survey with them. 95% of them, these are middle schoolers, Title I school middle schoolers, 95% of them would recommend our training. Says something. I think 2 of my favorite statistics, although very, very low, important. Six kids called a hotline. Tiny number. Took courage to do that. And then Ezra, what was one of the other percentages? Like 55% of them walked away from a dangerous situation. It's like 150 kids that we trained. So over half of them walked away from a dangerous situation. That's the impact of training our kids. That's the reason why we're having this conversation with you, is so you can have the dialogue with them. Because what our kids are dealing with, Scott, I may have you up to forward the slide, is this. Lisa's already covered this. I'm not going to go through every single thing, but there's 2 things I'm going to cover. One is cyberbullying. 17% of the kids said they stopped bullying online. It's a big deal. It's like a life saved in my world, right? And you'll see the hearts coming out of the phone. Kids want to be loved, they want to belong, they want to participate, and it doesn't matter how many times you tell them how smart they are, how beautiful or handsome they are, how great they are at sports. It's not the same if it comes from a stranger. We're an odd lot, humans, aren't we? We just really are. Okay, Scott. Yeah, okay. So I want you to look at the middle percentage. Most people think it's boys. The rise of online extortion, or girls, the rise of online extortion of boys is unbelievable, 322%. Now here's what I'm going to say about that. And I have enough men in the audience, we're going to test my theory. Societally, we don't give our boys or our men space to have more than two feelings. You can be angry or happy. That's it. That's all you got. So I'm going to say some phrases, gentlemen. I already got a smile over here. I'm going to say some phrases, gentlemen, and you can nod your head if any of them sound familiar. You ready? Okay. Man up. Suck it up. Toughen up. Oh, you're going to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. Don't throw like a girl. Don't run like a girl. Bottom line, don't be a girl. Any of those sound familiar, gentlemen? Yeah. When I say this to the boys, they all nod their head. So as a society, we've trained our boys not to talk about things. Then you've, of course, got cultural and familial conversations that you're dealing with. But this is why they're targeting our boys. They know that if I get you to send me a picture, and like that, I've got you, because you're not going to tell anybody. And here's the, I'm going to get a little heavy, and I promise to bring you back up. Our boys would rather commit suicide or run away than disappoint you. Girls, bear me out, ladies, if something's bothering us, at some point in time, we will work it out, won't we? At some point in time, we're going to be like, okay, I got to talk to you. Like, we will, right? Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, we will work it out. That's why back in the day, we had sewing circles. We got to talk about stuff somehow, right? Our boys don't have that opportunity. And the fact that after we talked to all these Title I kids, and they said that they shared a concern about another student or family member with a trusted adult, speaks volumes to me. These kids are tough. They've seen stuff that you and I have never seen before. There are gunshots in their neighborhood every single night. A lot of them are the man of the house. They're not going to share, but we give them space to do that. And that's part of our job as parents, to give them that space too. And for us to have that kind of open conversation, because they're being targeted intentionally from overseas predators. Okay, Scott, there we go. Gaming. Lisa wanted me to cover gaming. This is a world inside a world. It's where you can die and come back to life. It's where you get points for doing things out in the real world you would go to jail for. Now, it's interesting to me because the new Grand Theft Auto lead character is a female. Now, how many of you are familiar with Grand Theft Auto? Just need to know who. Oh, okay, good. So the lead character was a male. There was a lot of rape involved, right? I'm going to be really curious to find out how they're going to do that with a lead female character, how that's going to happen, or if it's going to happen. You get points for harming people in these games. And if you die, you come back. So there's no consequences. And when they're spending that kind of time on there, right there, no parental supervision. How many of you actually play video games with your kids? Okay, handful. Look, I used to sit with my kid. I don't get it. My fingers don't work how that, it is just, I don't get it. But I would sit with my daughter while she was playing. She was a really good gamer too. One of my favorite things is, because how our house was, is the kitchen here, stairs there, and I would hear her, yes, I'm a girl. Nope, I'm not gonna do that. Yep, I'm the lead, you're out of the game. She wouldn't tolerate it. She wouldn't tolerate being spoken to in a particular way. I have no idea where she got that from. And inside these video games, I was at a church in Phoenix and I shared about this and I said, look, and they'll do something so benign, send me a picture of your feet. Take a picture of your shirt off and send it to me. I'll show you how to level up. I'll show you where the Easter eggs are. I'll show you a back door. And I was speaking at this church, because we normally split the parents and the kids. I was speaking to the kids, and one of the boys came up to one of the youth pastors and goes, that just happened to me and my friend. He goes, we didn't do it. He's like, but that's real. I go, I know. That's why we talk about it, letting them know. Because our kids want to level up. They want to get that high score. They want to go into school and brag about what they did. It's part of it. Okay, Scott? Yes. So the picture on the top right was a picture I took today off of Twitch. There's a girl playing a game called Escape from some foreign name. She's literally just talking, and there's a chat on the side. And the names of some of these people that are watching this teenage girl play this video game, this is where they use games to lure our kiddos. You want to be the best? You want to be on Twitch? I'll help you get on Twitch. I'll help you level up. And my daughter actually wanted to be a Twitch star, but when she saw what was required to get sponsors and all of that, low-cut tops, all of that kind of stuff, she's like, Mom, I'm not doing that. Whew, mission accomplished. She made that choice, right? But this is where it's happening, is our kids are engaged in an unreal environment with no real consequences, able to come back again. And when they get to school and they share, oh yeah, I leveled up. Well, who helped you level up? Oh, this guy. So they start to bond together. There are traffickers in every single video gaming platform. Okay, Scott. Yay. So here's some things for you to look at. A friend of mine, one of my board members, said her daughter had come home from school 3 times with a stomach ache. Now, she's been on my board. She's been with me for a long time. She's like, I'm on it, Jan, I'm on it. It only took 2 days for her daughter to come home with a stomach ache. She's like, I'm on it. And apparently there were some girls at school bullying her, right? And she didn't want to tell her mom. She didn't want to be embarrassed. She didn't want to disappoint her mom, all of that. So something so simple as a stomach ache can be, and you got to go all the way back to those things that we shared of wanting to belong, single family household, homelessness, abuse, substance abuse. Add this, it's always +1. You just want to keep looking. You just want to keep looking. And the biggest thing too with boys, when boys get older, how many of you have boys, teenage boys? So I can verify this. So as they've gotten older, when you hug them, they're like, like Mom, right? It's like, ew, okay? But they still let you hug them, don't they? They may resist, but they still let you hug them. When they get combative, something's up. Like, what happened? It's like something's up. Scott, yay, okay. I'm not going to go over all of this because our friend Kate will go over a majority of this. But I have one question for you, because we have a handy tool for later for you to leave. How many of you know where your location settings are on your phone? Okay, keep them up high so I can count. Okay, good. Do you have them off? No? Okay, good. So I have a little handout. We'll have a little handout at the end of the night that will actually show you where your location settings are. Every single app has access to your location. Every app. So you got to go through every single app and say no, never, or only while using. Then you can go have that conversation with your kiddos. The last thing I'm going to share on this particular video, unless, is there something else you want me to cover? So I'm just checking with you. Okay, good. Sorry, Lisa. We all present together, and this is her thing, so I want to make sure she said what, anyway. So yeah, it's home, and Lisa helped put it together. Lisa helped put it together. This is courtesy of the father. Stop, block, talk, report. Tomas is going to cover this, what to do. We're coming to your school the 19th and the 26th. It's going to be really hard for you to wait. We're going to talk about how to have this conversation prior to that. The one thing you can't do, oh my God, I went to this training, let me see your phone. It's what you're going to want to do. Please don't do that. Please, 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 please. Okay? You share. Oh my gosh. I learned about DMs coming into my Snapchat or coming into my Insta, because I'm assuming you all have those so you can keep track of your kids. It's like we were talking about DMs. You know, I just recently got a DM from somebody I don't know. You're doing it while you're driving, right? So I'm going to demonstrate driving. I'm here, they're there. We're side by side, less threatening. Not over the dinner table. Show me your phone. That's what we do, parents, that waggling finger. Side by side. Yeah, we were talking about DMs, and I was noticing I was getting some I got this DM, and again, remember, I'm just easygoing, light, casual, curious. I've not really dealt with a lot of these. Has that ever happened to you? I'm driving, I'm looking straight ahead, but you know where my side eye is. Now, your kids are going to do one of two things. Oh, Mom, I get them all the time. I'll show you how to do it. Good. Now there's a conversation for you to have. And then we also know what our kiddos look like when they've done something they shouldn't. Fiddling, they look down, they won't look at you in the eye, they shrink, or they try to shrink in the car seat. No, Mom, that's never happened to me. Okay, just checking. Now's another conversation for you to have. When, not if, when your child comes to you and says, you know what, Mom, do you remember that conversation we had a few weeks ago? No, because we have lots of conversations. You're gonna go, yes. Yes, of course I do. Honey, what's up? Well, there's this guy and he's been DMing me and I'm making me uncomfortable and I'm not quite sure what to do. Neutral face. You have zero expression. They're gonna look for that, they're looking for micro movements. They're gonna look for that little twitch of the eye, the little movement of the face to be like, am I gonna be in trouble or not? That's all it takes, neutral, everything neutral. Okay, well, he keeps asking me for pictures and I don't know what to do. I got it, honey. I got it. I got you. It's not your fault. I love you. We got this. Neutral tone. You're going to stop the action. Do not delete anything. You're going to block that person. You're going to take all the pictures because that's evidence for law enforcement because it isn't the only person that they're talking to. Talk. That's the thing, Patty, we're going to talk with the kids. Talk to somebody. Talk to a trusted adult. Then you want to report it. And Tomas is going to go over that. Okay, Scott, there we go. The main reason why we love going in and talking to kiddos is two things. Did you know it's illegal in the state of Florida to cyberbully? Most people don't, neither do your kids. Or bully in general. Second thing. I'll check my time. In the state of Florida, it is illegal to take, send, or host an inappropriate picture if you're under the age of 18. Yeah. So, mostly, our kids are committing felonies every day, and they have no idea. Who pays for their phones? Who? You do, yeah. You should get, their eyes get real big when we talk about that. They're like, I said, so you're actually putting your parents in danger, and you don't know, because they don't know that, and neither do we. Now you do. Now you actually know. Okay, we're gonna go forward, Scott, there we go. And I'm complete. This is the reason why we do what we do. is it's easier to make a difference with young people than it is adults. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you, Jan. Wow. Amazing so far, these two presentations, Lisa. Oh.
I appreciate the eagerness to get into your material. Tomas Lares is our next presenter, and as you can tell, he is very passionate about what he does. He's one of actually the first people I ever met in the world of human trafficking prevention and awareness. And he's been a very pivotal part of the movement here in Central Florida, and we do have a great movement here. I know we saw some horrible statistics about how Central Florida is doing compared to the rest of the nation, but be rest assured that we have some strong advocates and fighters trying to balance the scale back the other way. And with everybody here today, it gives me a lot of hope as well. So our next, we heard what human trafficking is. We heard who does the human trafficking, or what the groomers can do to entice young people into sexual exploitation and into trafficking. The next presentation is going to be what to do if you suspect grooming or trafficking is occurring. As I indicated, Tomas Lares is our next speaker. He began his career in 1990 working with Big Brother and Big Sisters in Polk County, Florida, where he worked with children that were being exploited by their own parents. In 2007, Mr. Lares co-founded the Orlando Rescue and Restore Coalition Task Force to network key stakeholders in the greater Orlando region to combat human trafficking, and began a partnership with the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation. In 2009, he was invited to actually be a part of the first human trafficking outreach for a sporting event by the FBI in Tampa, Florida at Super Bowl 43. One of the big things one of the big areas where trafficking is kind of at its peak is when there's large sporting events, Super Bowl, World Cup. So those are big events where trafficking can occur because you got so many people coming in from all over, and there's lots of alcohol and drugs being exchanged. And so it's an easy way for traffickers to make a lot of money in a real quick amount of time. And Mr. Lares was very pivotal in creating a task force or a group to target or to those events to help to recognize if trafficking was occurring. In 2009, he also initiated a newly formed nonprofit called Florida Abolitionist, now United Abolitionists, an anti-human trafficking organization that networks, facilitates, and creates preventative and restorative solutions to end modern-day human slavery. Mr. Lares has been instrumental in creating a 24-hour human trafficking hotline in Central Florida, and for advocating Orange County government to fund a first-of-its-kind adult female human trafficking crisis 24-hour residential program in the state of Florida. In 2020, Mr. Lares was honored by the Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody as the Community Advocate of the Year for the state of Florida. He was also recently given the Frederick Douglass Award at the 12th Annual Polaris Star Awards in 2023 in Orlando, Florida. And recently, Tomas has begun co-chairing the Florida Statewide Human Trafficking Legislative Working Group, and was appointed by the Florida Statewide Human Trafficking Council's Services and Resource Committee to chair the Housing Standards Working Group. So once again, I'd like to welcome Mr. Lares to be able to be part of this presentation and to tell us what to do if you suspect grooming or trafficking is occurring.
All right. Thank you, Adam, for that introduction. I'm going to be brief, but I want to be very intentional and specific this evening on what do you do. You've received an incredible foundation, probably one of the best I've heard thus far, actually, tonight on what is trafficking and who these wolves are that are targeting our children. So how do you respond? And there's two things exactly. If you feel like somebody's being groomed, if your child, grandchild, or a friend is being groomed and recruited, right? Or somebody that may already be in human trafficking, unfortunately. And again, as Lisa pointed out, it can happen to anyone. We've had cases from Lake Mary to Dr. Phillips to some of the most impoverished areas of our region. And so it can happen to anyone. And exactly what you saw tonight, looking for love in all the wrong places. That's the vulnerability. And so as our first slide here is, if you see something imminent danger, right, or suspect it, please call 911. And there's situations where it's happened where somebody saw somebody trying to get out of a car and they wouldn't let a girl leave the car, and there was a struggle, something like that. Or if you see something in your neighborhood that looks really suspicious, you can call 911, right? So that's for an adult or a child. And I really encourage you to do that. If it's a child, a minor, in what Jan laid out tonight, in the school or again in your neighborhood or even in the church, and by the way, you can be anonymous on all these hotlines that I'm showing you. Please, for minors, we are mandated reporters to call the Department of Children and Families maltreatment code, which is a part of their abuse hotline now. So there's the number for that. And yes, take a picture of this. For adults, and I had the privilege since 2010 to partner with the National Human Trafficking Hotline. As Adam stated, I've been that first responder. That's my niche or my lane in the anti-trafficking movement for the last 20 years, has been that first responder. Somebody calls, somebody suspects, somebody identifies. Been in a lot of stings, like mentioned, with the FBI beginning way back all those years ago, and then with our local vice units. So the National Human Trafficking Hotline, you can call again. They speak different languages. If you need another language, you can be anonymous. And those calls are routed, most of those back here to Central Florida to our organization. Also, United Abolitionists, there's our phone number. If you need guidance, you're not sure, you have a question, you say, Tomas, something looks really suspicious, myself and my advocates will answer that literally 24/7. Bless Brenda's heart, she's been on the night shift, but just doing an incredible job responding. So please, no question is wrong, or please reach out if you're not sure. There you see the new Florida tip line that was created by FDLE and our Attorney General. That was new last year in 2023. That's more like Crime Line, but for human trafficking. It's the same office, but now they have a division. If maybe you see them illicit massage parlor, again, neighborhood where something looks suspicious, you can also call that tip line. That's mainly for crimes. Okay, so there's that National Human Trafficking Hotline. Some of the questions, we get calls, again, every week, sometimes daily. We started getting calls. It was amazing. In all those first years, it would always be law enforcement or emergency room nurses. When we started training the hotels, hotel managers may call. We even had a call once from Publix when the manager came to our training and was able to help a girl that she suspected, and they ended up calling the hotline. So when they call, and by the way, what I was going to mention, about 8 years ago, survivors or those victimized started calling, which was totally amazing. And we would ask them eventually, how did you know to call? And they said, well, it's on the street, or they were at the jail, or they just heard that they could get help, which is amazing. So one of the calls I do want to mention, because we work a lot with training the hotels, since the first Super Bowl outreach in the world of any sporting event in 2009 in Tampa that I had the privilege of partnering with the FBI, we started training the hotels, hundreds of hotels, hospitality, tourism workers since then. And we got a call during Hurricane Irma. And the hurricane was literally coming into town that evening, if you remember, which hit us pretty bad. I think like 100 miles an hour here in Central Florida. And we got a call from a motel, one of these brothels, really, on 192, of a girl that said, I got your number. The trafficker left. I'm supposed to meet somebody. I don't want to do this anymore. Can you help me? So we did. We got her safely out of that that motel into at that time a domestic violence shelter in Osceola County, and we were able to follow up the next day. She was safe during the hurricane, and then got her into a long-term program. So survivors have started calling in these last few years, which has been very incredible. Sometimes they'll call and they'll just be 5 minutes, and we just said, do you want to go to program? Do you want help? I'm not ready. Okay, well, we're here for you. When you're ready, please call. Other times we've had situations where we're hours on the phone with them, kind of just walking them through. Sometimes they're at a hotel, motel. They are scared. I'll call you back. The trafficker came back, or my pimp. So it's been amazing. So we asked, these are some of the questions. Are you safe, right? Do you need medical attention, right? A lot of them, again, remember they've been raped, and just horrific things have happened to them. Are you using any substances? No judgment. We want to get you, detoxing can be very dangerous, right, if you don't do it right, depending on the drugs that Lisa mentioned, the heroin, the meth, the crack. Do you need transportation? Right, so we can Uber them, right? We have an account. We can see if they got to, a lot of times we send them to Advent Health on an Uber to get their first encounter, and maybe one of our advocates will meet them there if they agree. Would you like to go to a program or shelter? And most are not sure, and so again, we plant that seed, and then we build that trust and rapport immediately. And that's what I've learned on these stings and these operations, waking up at 3 in the morning. Last year, we assisted the U.S. Marshal's Office with Big Sting. Polk County Sheriff Grady is doing an amazing job, the #1 sheriff in Florida, doing these stings to rescue victims, to make the traffickers and buyers accountable. So really keep the Sheriff Grady in your prayers, and that all our counties will follow the passion that he has to stop this evil. So we see there, thank you. Did I push that, or was it Scott? Scott's our new best friend. Okay, this is now Take It Down. This is a tool. Please take a picture of this. This is really important. Jan had mentioned the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. That's the center that John Walsh started after his son Adam was viciously murdered. In fact, we are giving them an award. We have a national awards that we do every year in January called the Polaris Star, and Mr. Walsh's son Callahan is coming here to receive the award in our ceremony. So that is an incredible resource. And what happens is people are seeing their images, these kids, and everything that you heard tonight appear on all different accounts, right? Some even the cases Lisa's doing, it becomes pornography. So what can you do if you need to take it down, that image, that video? Please use this tool. This is the #1 tool right now in the United States, because that's horrible. And in the case that Lisa said about Twitter right now, of those 2 boys that ruined their life, and unfortunately kids have already committed suicide because of these images that they didn't know how to take down. So that is my information. If you have any question, again, call our hotline, email me, go to our website, and thank you for this opportunity. I forgot to mention, it's very special, Father, for me to be here even tonight, because Catholic Charities, who you're going to hear from next, Kate, was our first member of our task force in 2007. They were the first member that we actually met at they had just built the Catholic Charities on Cimarron, and they said, well, come to our new building. Secondly, the diocese brought me in many years ago, and was able to introduce them to the issue, and they created the Human Trafficking Task Force after that. So this is wonderful to be with you all tonight, and thank you, and we're here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Tomas. We're going to move into our next presentation, which is regarding the dark side of artificial intelligence. Lisa Hava is once again going to present on this particular subject. And so I've already introduced her. I'll have her come back up and talk about artificial intelligence.
I want you, and everyone will make a choice themselves, but I want you to at least know what the potential risk of doing so is. If you share your pictures with your loved ones through social media, even if it's protected, there is a risk. Those pictures could be used in a way that you were never intending for them. And we're going to watch a quick video to understand what some of those risks look like.
Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. It's me, Ella. Well, a digital version of me. Just a bit older. Amazing what technology can do these days, isn't it? All you need are a couple of pictures, like the ones you share on social media, where they can be taken and used by everybody. I know for you, these pictures are just memories. But for others, they are data. And for me, maybe the beginning of a horrible future. A future where my identity can be stolen just like that. Where I can go to prison for things that I would never do. Imagine my credit score being destroyed, Dad. Or my voice copied to scam you, Mom.
Mom, I'm in trouble.
I need you to send me money, please. I don't want to become a meme, humiliated by everyone at school. And I certainly don't want this. What you share online is like a digital footprint that will follow me around for the rest of my life. I'm telling you this because I know you love me and would never do anything to harm me. So please, Mom, please, Dad, protect my virtual privacy.
So before I move on to what deep fakes look like, take a minute and think about what the implications of your beautiful children's faces being used in identity theft, or to help somebody else create a scam, or steal substantial money. There is a very real danger with the new AI technology that has come out very recently in the last couple years that makes pictures easy to manipulate. I am very confident that key players in our government right now are working on ways to verify identities and verify imagery. But right now, that's not real. Right now, your child's photos can be manipulated. And there's actually software out there right now, put out there by Microsoft, which you can alter a person's face and age them, reduce their imagery. You can completely change somebody with AI technology, and it's extremely easy to use and extremely easy to obtain. So this is not something that very high-tech hackers are using. It's very simple for anybody that wants to exploit somebody, just commit an identity theft to be able to do something like that if they got your images. I got a call from a good friend of mine not that long ago who called me in a panic. And this person said that they were part of they thought at the time that their child had been kidnapped, and they were going to go, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know if they should call the police, they didn't know if they should go take money out of the bank, but their child had called them and said that they were the victim of kidnapping, and if they didn't give them $50,000, their child was going to be killed. She was in a panic. So the first thing I did is I said, does your child have a phone? She does, but I'm not allowed to call her, because if I call her, they're gonna kill her. I said, great, but I can call her. So I did. She was fine. Nothing had happened to her. They had taken her voice and somehow manipulated it with AI technology to create a threat that sounded just like her. Her mother believed it was her daughter, telling her that if they didn't give her $50,000 and they couldn't call her, they were going to murder her daughter. So when we got through that, obviously she didn't turn over any money and the police got involved, but that's a very real risk when a mother can't even identify the difference between AI technology. So we're gonna give you a very simple tool to protect your own families from this sort of thing, this deep fake happening to you. AI are the ones that are creating this. Hackers are the ones creating this. So I know this probably sounds obvious, but if you have an Alexa in your home, don't do this right in front of the Alexa. Don't do this right in front of your cell phone, which it's listening to everything you say so it can send you targeted advertising. Leave all the technology inside, go outside, and talk to your family about a safe word. Have your family come up with a safe word that only your family members have, not something you've put online, not something you've posted about, but something that's unique to you. So that when that child calls you and says, I'm gonna die, you can say, I'd be happy to send you $50,000. I'm gonna need to hear the family password. And then you'll know if it's AI or if it's your child. So I would recommend each of you go home, and one of the things that you really should do is think about what that key password should be, explain that to your family members, and make sure that every single one of your family members not only knows that password, but never shares it with another living soul, never posts about it, never blogs about it, never puts any kind of written record out there online about it. Yes? Make sense? Okay. All right. And we are on to Kate.
Okay, our last presentation is entitled How to Speak to Your Children About Online Dangers, and our speaker is Kate Barrero. Kate Barrero's prayer is Matthew 6:10, for the Lord's kingdom to be present on earth as it is in heaven, and her mission is to live out that prayer through justice and compassion. With over a decade in social services and youth ministry, including as a community center director, she now coordinates the Diocese of Orlando Human Trafficking Task Force for Catholic Charities of Central Florida. Drawing on her prior experience with youth and at-risk populations, Ms. Barrero offers practical guidance for human trafficking prevention and intervention. So without further ado, Ms. Kate Barrero to speak about how to speak to your children.
Thank you. So, we learned a lot tonight. We got a lot of information. Now it's time for us to take action and do something with this tonight, right? So we talked about the start of this evening. We talked about Taken, and we talked about Liam Neeson's character, and how epic was that dad, right? How epic was that parent? He said he flew to another country where his kid was being trafficked, and he used his special set of skills. He did a little, right? And so today we're all going to learn that special set of skills, and we're going to go for it. No, that would be really epic, and that'd be really interesting. And some of you might actually be kind of cool with that, I don't know. But we're not going to do that, because as we talked about, and as we saw all throughout tonight, that's not really the risk of trafficking that we're talking about for your kiddos, right? We learned that way more often than not, human trafficking and sexual exploitation of our youth happens in our own communities, even within their own home. We also, it's a lot more practical for us to actually prevent exploitation from ever happening, or to intervene really early on. So that's what we're going to do today. We are still walking out with a special set of skills. We're walking out prepared, ready to take action, ready to implement some things in our own households to prevent exploitation of our kiddos. So here we go. We're going to cover 4 things tonight. This first thing, talk to your kids about the new sketchy white van. Okay, when we were kids growing up, no matter when you grew up, there's this expression, I'm sure you could finish the phrase, stranger, danger. Right. And our kids can probably repeat that too, right? And then also, for whatever reason, this one vehicle is picked out as, don't ever get into a sketchy white van. Don't ever go somewhere, even if someone entices you with candy or, hey, play with, I've got a pet or something, come with me. So our kids may know to not do that physically, but we have to talk to them about not doing that virtually. So how are we going to talk to our kids about what was covered tonight? As Jan said, you're going to want to just, if you have your kids sleeping with like a babysitter at the house or something tonight, you're going to want to go home and wake them up and tell them everything that you learned tonight. Or, just sit them down and have this really intense conversation. But don't do that. Breathe, process all this information, sit in on it. You got the long weekend. Maybe you can even find times throughout the weekend to pepper it into conversations, because this crew here and other experts in this field, they find that the most effective way to have difficult conversations with youth isn't that awkward sit down where you kind of give the impression like as if they're in trouble or something. The most effective way is just to sprinkle it into conversation as things come up. You bring up stories, bring up what you've learned tonight. Let's say video games come up. Hey, I heard that there's creeps that pretend to be middle school girls and try to get guys to send nudes, and then they use it to extort them for, try to blackmail them for money. That's nuts, right? What would you do if that ever happened to you? Or do you know of a way where you could stop that from happening? Make it into a conversation. If photos come up, anything like that. If you come from a generation where maybe you were part of social media in the early days, maybe you even have some stories you can draw on from AOL chat rooms or from the early days of Facebook or MySpace, something like that. But make it into a conversation. And here's the thing too, is Jan brought this up, that kids have thoughts on this subject. So as you're talking to them and you're making this into a conversation, they have their own thoughts and opinions on this too. They might even have different information than what you've gathered tonight. They might even, in some areas and some little details, have better information than what you've even heard. So rather than it be this awkward sit-down conversation or discussion, formal lecture, humbly make it into a conversation. Make it just, bring it up, like Jan said, when you're driving, just going about your day as things come up. Next thing, set boundaries together. We love our kids. We want to just create a border around them, protect them, keep them in, block everything out. But the real key word here is that word together. Because if you're setting that boundary with your kids, it's their choice, they see value in it, they're gonna wanna do it too. That's why Jan talks to the kids. That's why she doesn't say, okay, everybody, give me your phones, I'm gonna reprogram your phones. She talks to them and explains the reasoning behind it and makes it into a conversation. So let's look at setting boundaries at different ages. When your kids are really young, you're gonna wanna put very strict restrictions, just go ahead on their iPad. Let's say if they're preschool age or kindergarten, right? You're gonna go ahead, elementary school age, you're gonna set those boundaries for them. A big thing there is you're also going to be with them while they're on the internet. If you think about it, your young kids on the playground, you're not gonna just let them go play on their own, right? You're gonna be keeping an eye on them. The internet's the same way, even if it's a safe YouTube page. So you're gonna keep an eye on them. And in the same way that at a playground, you set up some sort of boundary or safety where they know, okay, if I feel unsafe, if a stranger's coming up to me, if they're telling me, come here this way, I know I need to go and run to mom or dad. So set that type of same standard for when they're online. Hopefully they never have it and interact with it in 5, 6, 7 years old, but they know the same way if they're unsafe in person, if they see something unsafe online, if they talk to someone, they know to go right to their parents from then. As they get older, of course, they're going to want to get a phone or connect with their friends through video games. They're social. That's part of growing up. So that's when you're going to actually start to really form those boundaries with them and make it into conversation. So you're going to ask them, you can ask them, as they're approaching the age where they're wanting to get a phone, they want to have access to chat with their friends on video games or things like that, ask them, well, what do you want it for? What's the purpose? What's the goal of having an Instagram account or having a TikTok? What's your purpose behind it? And let them share with you. Well, what I want from this is I want to connect with my friends. I want to watch funny videos, follow celebrities, make TikTok videos and dances. And then ask them also, well, what do you not want to happen? And make it a conversation about what you don't want to happen. And then together with them, look at the app, go through and set with them what parameters, what guidelines they're going to set for themselves with you for when they're on those apps, so that way they get what they want out of it and they're protected from what they don't want. Here's a list of just some examples. This isn't exhaustive. If you want, you can take a picture of this, and these can be some guidelines that you talk about with your kids. Some things on here, have an exit plan. Jan talked about this. If someone starts messaging them that they don't know, just stop it right then. Take a screenshot of what's being said, block them, go talk to the parent. Don't DM strangers, don't message strangers. Probably if you talk to your kids and you say, oh, what do you want out of social media, what do you not want? Probably don't want creeps to talk to them. Great. Here's a simple solution to that. If someone random messages you, we're going to block them. Now, some advice that I heard, Lisa said she has actually known some folks that have implemented this successfully, is if they're introducing a piece of technology to their kids, like using a phone or something like that, they'll create like a phone contract with them saying, hey, while you're with this access to this phone, these are the boundaries that we're setting. There's also programs like Bark. You can install that where you can actually get notifications if your kid is receiving some bullying, texts of bullying or sexting or anything like that that's inappropriate, you'll get an alert. But again, that's something to make a conversation with your kid, not to kind of sneak around and do, because then there's distrust, and then that just makes things a little trickier. And then as they're older, the goal of setting those boundaries and maybe being a little closer in with them as they're younger is that as they get older, they know to establish those boundaries themselves, so they're safe on their own. Just like when a kid's older, maybe they reach a certain point of maturity where you can drop them off at the mall, and you know that they'll call you, that they'll reach out to you if something is unsafe. They're going to stick together with their friends, and in the same way, you can trust them online. Now, if your kids are already active online, you didn't get to follow that nice little progression from the time they're young and raise them up in this slowly, incrementally, setting boundaries with them. Like Jan shared, make it a conversation with them and ask them, hey, I've gotten haven't you guys ever gotten a random DM? I was going to ask you guys, have you guys ever gotten a random DM on Facebook, or someone you think it's them and turns out their account got hacked? So many times. I moved down here from Connecticut, and I had somebody connect with me who I thought reconnected, who was from back up there, and I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard from them in forever. How sweet is it that they just messaged me on Facebook? And I was like, wait a minute. Sure enough, short time afterwards, I realized their just account got hacked. They did not reach out. Use that. Hey, I thought that Susie just messaged me and her account got hacked. Has anything ever happened like that to you? And then make it into conversation of maybe your kids already have boundaries they've set. If you haven't had this conversation before and they've been using social media for 2-3 years, even a few months, they're setting boundaries or not setting boundaries based on their experiences and that of their peers. So talk to them, see what they already are doing. And then like Jan said, I think he said oh good, the kid blocked it. Well, did you report it? Oh, I can report it to the platform? Okay. Did you tell an adult or tell your parents? Oh yeah, okay, I could tell my parents. So again, it's all about having that conversation. Next part of the action plan, replace the dopamine releases. Did you know, you might know this because if you have social media, you might experience this, but there's a bit of a dopamine release when you are using social media, right? Or you're playing a video game. It's so strong that some people actually kind of go through a little bit of a detox if they are going cold turkey off of it. because their brains are craving that release. So what if you create intentional moments that are phone-free zone moments in your home? And I'm not saying to just go from like 0 to 100 on it. Maybe do like one 30-minute meal once a week where you say, hey, we're not going to use phones at this time. Maybe even doing something interesting like you can Google random get-to-know-you questions or icebreakers, which kind of feels weird to do with family, but there's like random little things you can get to know each other, get to know with each other. Do something like that. You might get some eye rolls if you've never done that type of thing before. You can actually probably expect to get some eye rolls or, this is dumb, Mom, why can't I have my phone at the table right now? Just roll with it, just push through, it's worth it, it's okay. You just go into it knowing, hey, next week might get better, next week might get better. And then you're doing game nights and you're doing activities out. And the point is not to just say, oh, we're gonna have a time where you're away from your phone, but we're replacing what was this activity there that was giving them a rush and giving them joy and giving them excitement through interactions with their family, through interactions with you, through these really great memory-making moments. So go ahead and try to create opportunities for a break from social media, from the phone, and replace it with something else instead. And lastly, those 3 things will not work. Well, they might for a minute on some level, on a surfacey level. They're not really going to work out without this culture of just cultivating trust and cultivating connection in your family and with your kid. You're not going to have that conversation very openly about setting boundaries. There's going to be a bit of distrust there. New information that you share, it's not really trustworthy if you don't, trust the source. Let's talk about you guys right now. You guys are all sitting in seats. Why are you guys sitting in seats? Seats have been proven throughout your life to work. They prove faithful to, if you do coming in here, okay, I gotta stay here for 2.5 hours, I can trust this seat because in the past, chairs have worked out for me and I can be fairly certain of the outcome when I sit in the seat. And with kids with trust, we can tell them, you can trust me. We can tell them, tell me anything. Like Jan said, I'm not gonna react. I've been guilty of that before, right? You're like, oh, I'm not gonna react. And it's like, okay, I gotta try not to react. I gotta try not to twitch and show how shocked I am. You can, tell your kids that, but if you don't really cultivate that trust, then they don't really trust to have that conversation with you, to be vulnerable with you like that. And it's not instant, right? It's something that's built, it's cultivated over time. And it's cultivated through a lot of different ways. It's not just through those difficult conversations, but it's through things like welcoming their world, their interests, their feelings without critique. It's a sincere appreciation for who your child is, the weird things that they're into, and 9 years old or 10 years old that they think's funny, or their shows or something like that. It's conversing with them, showing that you have an interest in their perspective, because they do. Like Jan said, they have great perspective into things. And even if you don't agree at times, still valuing their perspective and hearing them out. And it's even also sharing some embarrassing stories about yourself, having that type of dialogue with them. And so then if your child trusts you, they get one of those messages, they feel comfortable coming and talking to you because they've seen before in other ways how they've been able to trust you. So we're gonna do a little self-assessment about trust. We're gonna kind of set aside this conversation and just do a little quick introspection. And it takes a little bit of an approach of humility because, I don't know, my first guess for myself is, I rock at being trustworthy because yeah, of course, trustworthy. I can be trustworthy, I can be trustworthy. But let's just pause, we're gonna do some introspection for a second. I want you to pause and think of an experience where you trusted someone and the outcome was not really good. Just pause and think about that. What happened? Why did that person prove untrustworthy? Or maybe think of a person that you've never trusted. You just didn't even try trusting. Why didn't you trust them? And then now think in your own life of a time where you did go to someone you trusted and they heard you, and that positive experience. What was that like? Why were they trustworthy? Let those experiences of where you found someone wasn't trustworthy and why and what happened there, and then where someone was trustworthy and what that did for you and how they acted towards you, be a student of those experiences. And then with trust and connection, you're going to have a lot more success with that whole action plan and implementing what you've learned tonight. So that's the action plan. You're going to talk about the new sketchy white van with your kiddos at some point in some sort of conversation. You're going to talk to them about setting boundaries. It's going to look a little different at different ages. But again, it's that making it still a conversation. They're part of that decision for setting boundaries. They're part of that conversation. You're creating new opportunities for dopamine releases in creating phone-free zones and opportunities for you guys to just laugh and just have a good time. And then you're cultivating trust and connection. And those are your special set of skills to keep your kids safe. Now, after tonight, here's some tips if you want to see this. This is from Jan, of having an opening and inviting dialogue. So creating a safe space, again, sharing a fact or story, something that maybe you can kind of connect with and relate with your kiddos. Be curious, be learning, be okay to learn from your kids. Ask follow-up questions. And again, we want to rush and have those conversations tonight, but just stop, breathe, process it, and then let those happen naturally. So tonight, you had so much information, and I'm so thankful for each of you for coming here and really taking everything in. You might find over the weekend that you have more questions. You want to talk about this further. Or online, this is an invitation for you too. So we're going to have a parents Q&A on Tuesday from 5:30 to 6:30. It's over Zoom. It's just a drop in, drop out. You can use that QR and you can get the link for the Zoom, and then you can also, right there on that, through that link, submit your questions ahead of time, or you can show up with your questions. That's cool too. You can talk anonymously, openly, and we're happy to continue this conversation. So I'm going to pass it to Lisa, but thank you so much again for coming out tonight.
Lisa, do you want to put the next slide on that has all the contact information? Oh, there it is. Okay, so if anybody wants to take a photo of this as well, these are all four of our presenters tonight and their email addresses. I know each and every one of them will be happy to answer any questions and take any emails that you would like to send. They're all very passionate, along with everybody they work with, on fighting this evil in this country, and particularly in this community. And so that's the conclusion of our presentation. I do want to thank again Annunciation Catholic Church, particularly Father Ivan and Principal Kale over at the Academy, for really embracing this ministry. This is something that's been very passionate to all of us for some time, and we've been trying to find a way to bring it to the parish and to the community and to the greater Central Florida area. And so when Father Ivan came up with this great idea for a ministry, we were all on board, and so we were so grateful that he allowed us to put on this presentation and allowed us to be part of this ministry. And so with that, again, thank you all for being here. I'm going to have Father Ivan come up to provide a closing prayer. And again, thank you all for your attendance.
Let's say thank you once again. Let's say thank you to them. Thank you so much. I want to also leave you with an amazing tool that's going to help you with all the information that we received this evening. At that first presentation I went to, I use this tool, and this tool is, as we talk about cultivating trust and connection, well, the very first person that we need to do that is our Lord. And so tonight I ask you to use this tool first and take all that you received this evening to prayer and allow the Lord to show you how to use these resources and tools to protect your children, our children, to protect our neighbors, to protect all our families. And it's simple. It's just ARRR. And what that stands for is acknowledge, relate, receive, respond. And one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that there was a lot of information this evening. But let us acknowledge that it was great information that we received this evening. Let us also acknowledge perhaps there might be some feelings of, why didn't I know this? Acknowledging that, wow, I don't even know what's happening with my own children. Just to be able to acknowledge your true, honest feelings. They're real. I don't know about you, but even knowing the information that was going to be shared, I still have to acknowledge it's still difficult to hear. I want to acknowledge that I feel helpless. Want to acknowledge that this is an amazing ministry. There's so much to acknowledge, but don't leave it there. We talked about the conversations. That's relating. We want to acknowledge and we want to relate to God in prayer. Prayer has to be a part of this. But also, we're going to ask God to help us to relate to our families, to our neighbors, to our children, to our students. To acknowledge that this is real. This is a threat. And this isn't happening over there. This is happening here. So we acknowledge first our true feelings, and then we begin to have a dialogue with God and ask God to help us to dialogue with our children. He will create the space. He will create the conversation. He will create the right situation. And He will help you, and we just need to acknowledge it and relate it. Then we want to receive. We want to continue this ministry. We want to receive more information. We want to receive more tools, more resources, but we want to receive grace from God to give us the patience, the courage, the inspiration we need to continue to share the information we received this evening. And finally, respond. We heard how not to respond this evening. But also we heard how to respond this evening, to share this information, but to be patient in terms of your young ones and letting God create that right situation for you. I always say, wait for the Lord to lead you and then follow in His way. I always ask the Lord, the first time, what does this mean? I'm afraid, Lord. I want to help, Lord. Tell me what to do. I began to just acknowledge my feelings around this human trafficking issue. And I began to relate it to God in prayer. And He helped me to receive the guidance that we needed to begin and forming this ministry. And now He's telling me and telling all of us how to respond. It's an amazing tool. Add it to the tools that you received this evening to be able to acknowledge what you feel, what you're experiencing, what are your thoughts. But don't leave it there. Begin to relate, having that dialogue, cultivating that connection with God, and asking the Lord to help you to relate that information to our loved ones. And then ask the Lord to give you the guidance the strength, more tools, more information to be able to share what we have shared this evening, and finally to respond in a way that is helpful to everyone here, to all our families, to our students, to our children, and to our community, in a way that's going to help protect and continue to share information to prevent, but also helping to those who have already been trafficked to have the courage to trust that we're here to help as well. I want to thank you all, too, for answering the call, for receiving the invitation, and for taking the busy time. This was a lot of information, but it was all so good and so beneficial to all of us. I want to thank again all those who presented this evening, but in particular, I want to thank you. Thank you. Ask the Lord to just give you the guidance on how you need to share this information. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you, and we want to acknowledge your presence. We want to acknowledge your help. We thank you for relating this information to us and for helping us to receive it and to respond in a way that is helpful and is going to continue to help our children. We ask you to continue to bless the ministry, continue to help those who are sharing the information you provide. We ask you to give success to the work of our hands and help us, dear Lord, to safeguard our children. May you bless us, may you bless our families, and may we place all our hope and trust in you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Go in peace. Thank you all. God bless you.
Just one other quick thing as you guys are leaving. We do have a total of three handouts for you to take with you with some additional resources and a lot of the information that we spoke about tonight. So please make sure you grab that from the rear from one of our helpers in the back. And then finally, again, with the contact information that was up there, I forgot to mention at the beginning of this presentation, this is actually the National Human Trafficking Prevention Month. So this is a very pivotal time that we presented this. So if you want to get involved in any of the other causes or any of the other organizations, there's a lot of events going on this month, things that are going to continue throughout the year, but that are starting this month. So please, please, please reach out to one of the four presenters, and they can definitely tell you about some of the other events that are going on this month and throughout this year. Thank you again.
Hey, how are you? Yes, you too. Oh, it's been a long time. I was just. My mic.